Hey, welcome to the Conversations podcast. Today's episode is a special one. We have Pastor Jon Thompson speaking with us today all about deliverance, spiritual gifts, and to not be afraid when it comes to the demonic and Satan. And so please enjoy today's episode. We have a special guest with us, Pastor Jon Thompson, who is the lead pastor at Sanctus Church and the author of many books, including Convergence, Perseverance, and Deliverance, which is the book that we're going to be talking about today. Our church is going through our Deliverance series, and what does it look like to be set free from demonic oppression and possession. And I thought today we would have Pastor Jon just talk about the process of your book, the process of a deliverance ministry. So thanks for jumping on.
It's great to be with you. I'm in Toronto, so yes, all the trees are like turning beautiful color, but you wouldn't understand that in SoCal.
No,
it's a different world. We don't have no earthquakes here, right? Like we're good. We're good. Yeah. But you do have pomegranates in your front yards, so
yeah, that is true. We do have pomegranates.
And other good things that I don't have.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. The trees that one's a special one. That one I'm truly jealous.
Yeah. Fall is legitimate here, and so is Christmas. So if God ever calls me to SoCal, I suppose I'd celebrate, but I don't know if my Christmas heart can survive.
It, right? Yeah.
Lack of snow. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, that would be tough. I think, we're obviously we're in October and it's still hot, and it's just like, why? You know, we're like, why is this happening? It shouldn't be like this right now.
Yeah, well, give it some global warming time. Something might happen there.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, let's jump into the book, Deliverance. Like I said, our church is going through this series, and we kind of have been using your book as kind of the base additional resource, aside from the Bible, obviously, kind of the foundational launch pad for us to develop this ministry and just to see a lot of people being set free within our local church. And so, I just want to ask you about the process of writing this book. What was that like? And was there any struggles within that?
Yeah. So, this story starts a long time ago in a land far, far away. So I've been on staff for 27 years in one church. Wow. So I've led through 4 iterations. I became the youth pastor here years ago. I became the senior pastor at 30 years old. And we were historically a non-charismatic Willow Creek based seeker sort of church. Now that was sort of the church's history. I was a little different. When I was a youth pastor, I'm like a contemplative, small c charismatic, small c Calvinist expository preacher. And so I was as different as, things could be with my senior pastor. And, what started happening is now just background too, Toronto's the most multicultural city in the world, way more than LA, New York, Singapore, Hong Kong. And a lot of people don't know this, especially Americans. It's the 4th largest city in North America. Wow. And so it's a massive global hub. And so I'm sitting in this overtly historically white church, which now there's 55 nations. It's unbelievable here on a Sunday. But back then, historically white church, not charismatic, not our deal. And this stuff starts happening, and we have no theology and no context for it. And so we weren't looking for it. The weird people down the church did that stuff. We didn't like them. We'd hang out with them in the new heavens and the new earth, but never before. That was sort of the starting point of the conversation. But we were forced into it because it was there. And is it psychological? Is it mental illness? What is spiritual? What's from God's side? What's from ours? So that started a journey where for 13 years we were dealing with issues. And actually, I ended up doing my doctorate in California in intercultural studies. And my whole thesis was basically, have what we've been doing, is it all wrong for 13 years? And so 4.5 years of work globally, locally. And then from that moment, that's how the book came about, because it was by that point, 20 years, probably 700 cases connected to the church, 4 years of doctoral thinking and talking to global leaders. And that was there's so little written on this that is balanced, that is theological, that's biblically grounded, that has context for experience, and actually sort of puts us on the ground. And so that's sort of the process of how the book came to be.
Wow. Yeah, that's honestly, that feels honestly like genuine. Obviously, God is taking you through this journey, but then also the fact that it started with, hey, there's things that are happening in our church that we don't know what to do.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of the experience a lot of the evangelical churches are getting, is kind of saying, hey, we are having either back to back or at least once a week or something of somebody coming in, and we just don't know how to handle what's going on. And exactly what you're saying, like, no, go to the crazy church down the street who's more Pentecostal, more loud or in your face as they seem to be, and be like, yeah, we don't necessarily deal with this. But the fact of the matter is that this is an important topic, and I'm really thankful for your work in this. And I love how, yeah, the beginning of it is literally like more experiential rather than you trying to make an intellectual case or a proof text almost. That's kind of the way I felt. I love the way you mapped out everything in the book of kind of talking about, hey, these are my assumptions, these are what's coming from me as I continue to write this book, or as you're going to continue to write the chapters, and then from there you have a very great biblical and theological case, and then you get to the practical side. Mm-hmm. And so in that process, were you kind of like, man, I wish we can get over the biblical and theological like nuances and just get straight to the like, here's how to deliver people, here's how to show them freedom? Like, I don't know, was there kind of a tricky process?
Yeah. So no, good. And yes. So I'll say both. Here's the reality: we were already dealing with it.
Yeah.
And so just again, background for me, like, I'm a theologian by bent. And so for me, scriptural nuance matters.
Right.
Exegesis matters. Mm-hmm. Christian history matters. And so we were trying to theologically process where we were literally trying to set people free at the same time. Yeah. It's sort of like you're in the trench and you're suddenly in combat and you're like, I don't even know how to use a machine gun. So it's learning at the same time. Here's what I'll say. The great need that is happening in the Western church right now is twofold. Mm-hmm. Conservative people need to be theologically okay before they act. And okay doesn't mean comfortable. Okay means I understand that there's a good biblical precedent for this. So whether I'm scared or not, whether I think it's weird or not, I have to submit to the authority of Scripture. So conservative people want guardrails. And so I do a lot of work talking about theology and biblical stuff on purpose because so many conservative people actually themselves are bound and don't know how to get free. But until they see that it's going to be okay biblically, they won't budge. Charismatics, who are just as important in the body of Christ, are all like doing all the things, but sometimes they need to slow down and build process. They need to build theology to clarify the source of the experience that they're having, because conservatives have been taught their whole lives experience is dangerous, which, by the way, is terrible theology.
Right.
It's terrible theology because we supposedly know a living God, and know is not just intellectual. It's not just Greek knowing, it's Hebrew knowing. It's intellectual. So experience is not wicked. Our job as pastors is to interpret experience, not dismiss experience. Charismatics that tend to live high experiential, realities need to make sure the experience is from our side.
Yeah.
And so I'm writing in those two directions at once, because any good church has a great amount of conservatives and charismatics sitting beside each other singing the same song. And so working with those two camps to get them to the middle, to have the same common language, to understand theology, to not dismiss experience and not to hype up experience, but ground experience, that's actually the role. All of this, by the way, for your audience, if you're like, wow, this is like, where is this? This is actually called spiritual theology. It's the systematic evaluation of spiritual experiences from a biblical worldview and a biblical source. And just for your audience that's thinking about this, don't presume weird is wrong, because weird is a cultural statement. And by the way, side note, have you read your Bible? It's freaking weird. Like, it's bizarre.
Legit.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to like be naked and lay on my side for 40 days or lay naked on an image of Jerusalem because God told me to do that. Like, so be really careful you don't domesticate scripture, because scripture actually is profoundly strange.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not strange that's the issue. It's like I always say, even with spiritual gifts and other conversations I do, it's not about what you're observing. It's actually what's the source behind the thing. So if you think about a wall socket, the real question we need to be asking is where's the electricity coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of this whole process theologically, and then of course using gifts and all sorts of other things in a community.
Right. Wow. What would you say is the where was like the link in the chain for you in the process to be like, hey, this is where we can get the charismatic and we can get the conservative on the same page to get
so that's a different story and a different podcast. So I mean, what basically happened is we started experiencing a renewal when I was the youth pastor
Mm-hmm.
here. We didn't even know we were leading one.
Wow.
And we didn't even understand it. And then, I was preaching like, I don't know, through Romans to youth, and all this and the Apostles' Creed at youth group, and all this supernatural stuff started happening. And we didn't even understand back then that people were actually just using spiritual gifts. We didn't even have classifications for that. So what organically started happening in the youth group here is God started showing us different gifts in different people. And suddenly we started having this bizarre synergy between what we would now call conservatives and charismatics and even social justice warriors all in one group. And what we suddenly realized was actually they were all expressions of spiritual gifts, not disciplines, not natural gifts or acquired gifts, spiritual gifts. And we went, oh, interesting secret sauce. I wonder if we can keep ourselves all together if we see all of this through the lens of gifts and not through the lens of personality or gender or age. Wow. And then it exploded. And that moment where some weird stuff happened, we realized they were gifts, not momentary experiences, actually became the core driving way we do ministry in this whole church 25 years later.
Wow.
So we've made spiritual gifts the epicenter of actually how we run church. And remember, we're a multi-site, 5-location, to use American language, mega church. Right. and so like, how do you embed spiritual gifts? And word, love, and power is the language we use from Clinton and Clinton at Fuller. How do you make that the center? And then why that brings unity is suddenly I go, so if I have a power gift and you don't, I'm not saying you have to have that. You just need to understand that I have that and you don't. We're going to be okay. Yeah. Versus you need to have this. And what's wrong with your spiritual life? Right. Or you don't have it, so you're suspicious. Mm-hmm. That's how we got conservatives and charismatics to hang out, because we said the spiritual gifts are sovereignly ordained. God chooses what you get. There's at least 21, maybe 24 in the New Testament. When you understand what you have, then you realize actually no one else is supposed to have that unless they're sovereignly ordained. So this competition, why don't I have that? I should ask for that. Or if I pray more at an altar, then I get that thing. Or I fake it to make it. I tried so hard and it didn't happen. All that stuff is removed.
Yeah.
And suddenly we go, so here's a great example historically. I remember walking in our main site here, and it was a Tuesday night, and there was like a children's program going on. There was a worship team practice. There was an actual strategic plan meeting about land in another room, and we were casting demons out in the nursery. And I went, and this is what church should be.
Yeah.
Because none of those things were more supernatural. That's just the work of God in multiple directions. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. I grew up in a Pentecostal church. I grew up as a charismatic. And then when I came to this church, not charismatic, not Pentecostal, but definitely wanting something a little bit more than just the conservative approach or just the, jump in on Sunday. We are, again, one church, many locations. That's our language. We are a bigger church. And so we used to be on the more seeker friendly model, right? So avoid the hard topics, avoid the ones that make newcomers not want to come back in the next week. But then that shift, kind of what you're saying of like, this is real. Like this topic is real, and to understand, like, we need to really focus in on our spiritual gifts and what does that mean. And yeah, simply, I feel, even talking about spiritual gifts, I definitely grew up with being like, if I don't have all the spiritual gifts, then I'm not saved. Or if I don't have all of these things, then I'm not a good Christian. And that was it was really damaging. And I would avoid, because my parents were pastors, and they have some wild stories about deliverance, of what they've seen. And I've always, because I grew up with like, oh yeah, if you don't have this spiritual gift, or if you don't have all of these things, then you're a bad Christian. I would be literally afraid whenever somebody would say, oh, somebody's demon possessed, or somebody, hey, there's this demonic spirit or anything. And I would be like, okay, I want to avoid it because I'm not good enough to do these things. And yeah. And so with that, obviously having to learn that Jesus is central in my heart. And because of that, flows out the works that he can do. But did you find it difficult for people to come up to you like that, of being like, well, I don't think I'm good enough, or I don't think I have enough to do what you are asking, or to at least jump into this type of ministry?
Yeah, so I'll take this in two directions. Number one, all good seeker-sensitive churches should just be seeker-aware churches. And what seekers, by the way, and I just don't like the word seekers. So when I preach here, I always refer to seekers, skeptics, people from other religions, and people who are spiritual.
That's good.
Because those are four different categories. So every Sunday, I did it last Sunday, and I addressed them all differently. And I guarantee you, the vast majority of people checking your church want a conversation about spiritual power because they've experienced it.
Right.
They just do. So it's the most seeker-sensitive thing you can do, is talk about demons, dreams, visions, and or intellectually also address issues. That's just a side note. But, anyway, whole nother podcast, but really good. Here's the thing about what you just said. And just, there's a difference even between Pentecostalism and charismatic. Those are even two different camps. But I'll say this, you talk about the feeling of feeling inadequate or not, good enough, which is a classic shadow in Pentecostalism, by the way. I mean, that's the dark side of an amazing thing that God has done in that movement.
Correct. Yeah.
So I'll address it like this. There are 5 places of authority, not one. And as your community is thinking this through, this is just so important. So most people, when they think about dealing with evil, they reduce everything down to one place: common authority. Common authority is I'm in Christ, you're in Christ, Drew. So Ephesians 2, seated with Christ in the heavenly realms. James 4:7, submit yourself therefore to God, resist the devil, he must flee. Great. So I'm not more powerful than you are, because you and I both have the same place. We both are seated with Christ in the heavenly realms, right? No problem. Right. So the weakest Christian on earth and the most intellectual Christian on earth, same thing. Almost all Christians only talk about common authority, and even most deliverance ministries only rooted on common authority. The problem with that is that's not sustainable long term. So James 4:7, for example, and Ephesians 2 and Ephesians 6, most of them are written defensively. When the day evil comes against you, then you stand. Not you go picking a fight, it's against you. So there's no doubt that if you tell evil to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning, in the name of Jesus, you're accessing a well that's not you. Great, no problem. But that doesn't produce longevity in a church scenario when this is being done in ministry. So you've got to look at the 5 areas of authority. So you've got common authority, and then there's office authority. There are people who are elders or pastors or deacons or bishops, depending on the language you use, and there's an authority they have spiritually that other people don't have. We all have access to the Father through Christ the Son. We all are priests in the generic sense, true. But there is an authority with them, supernaturally, the demonic are aware of. Third is gift authority. And this gets through to what you were sort of driving at, right? Because in Pentecostalism, you need to beg to get all the things, and then if you work it hard enough, you get them. Right. You're more Catholic than you ever realized, by the way. It's just, Friday night at the altar and going to the confessional booth is just about the same thing, experientially. So here's the heart of it. If I have common authority, great, or office authority, great. But if I have discernment of spirits, or I have the gift of miracles, for example, I will have more authority to deal with that stuff than you will long term, because that's permanent. Like if I have the gift of mercy, then when I show up and I'm not grieving the Spirit because of sin, there will be greater acts in and around mercy through me, because that's how I'm sovereignly gifted.
Hmm.
So when you move from personal common authority, dealing with it every once in a while in life, or being tempted, or even a scenario, to building a ministry, you've got to make gifts the center, because gifts are how the Spirit is distributing authority permanently in people. You don't wake up one day and get tongues, and the next day you're a prophet, and the next day you're an administrator. That's not the way Paul talks about it. You're not an eye one day and the head the next day. It's not an empty box. You get what you get. So you got common authority, you got gift authority, you got office authority, then you have assignment authority. Certain churches have assignments by the Lord for a period of time to do something, so have more authority. And then the question about headship in the house is also a conversation to have. It's not about dominance, not even egalitarian versus complementarian conversations, but there is something there related to authority. So the question is, who in your community has what golf club matters when talking about this? We all have common authority, but if you have common authority, elder authority, and gift authority, maybe you should be doing this in a more ministry-oriented way. As an example, or a gift authority. You see how I'm doing this?
Yeah, right.
Very different approach than get to the altar and you've got to be a super Christian or nothing.
Right. Yeah, and that's obviously vital when it comes to even being a believer in Christ, because I feel like if you just stick to the ask for everything, try hard enough, just do better, one, you're always going to be chasing after something, or you're always going to be going back to the altar. But the Bible never teaches us that, to come back to the altar in the sense of like, wait, I thought I did everything right. Okay, so go back, or this whole back and forth thing.
Yeah, there's when I talk to younger leaders, and actually also older broken leaders, there's this talk I give on why God's no is your best friend. And in Romans 12 is actually a spiritual gifts passage, by the way. Wow. And Paul says you should measure yourself based on the faith distributed or given to you. And that's not salvific faith, by the way, that's related to gifts. And so here's the wild thing. What Paul says in Romans 12 is you don't get to choose what gift you get, and you actually don't even get to choose how much anointing you get behind the gift. So you don't even get to choose the gift. And if I always say this, if you imagine riverbanks in your head, right? Right? Like God actually chooses the amount of, if you're charismatic, you use the word anointing. If you're Baptist, you use the word influence. If you're non-denominational, you use the word umph. I don't care. Yeah. God determines how much power you get behind the gift and also the gift. So the idea that we're taught in North America is if I work hard enough, if I go to enough courses, or if I pray hard enough, I not only can get more gifts, I can get more power. And Paul says, actually, you don't. God sovereignly assigns what gifts you get, and he determines. So if you think about a riverbank, some people will get a creek of authority, some will be given a river authority, some will be given an ocean of authority. It's the same gift. And this idea that if I'm closer to God, I get more anointing is unbiblical.
Wow. Yeah.
Because you don't grieve the Spirit, but you can only go up to the riverbank, and then you're done. You're capped. And so the freeingness of this is amazing. Because if your whole congregation and your whole staff did this and said to the Lord, I would like to know what spiritual gifts I never get. And I would like to know what platforms you will never let me have. And I'd like to know how much anointing you will never give me. And I would like you to start telling me all the things in my dreams, in my volunteerism, in my serving, or in my ministry life that I want to do for the Lord that you don't want me to do. And if you had the courage to ask the Lord of the church what you don't get, then you would actually be free from coveting and jealousy and running back to get something, because you actually know what he's decided. And then the prayer I used to pray is that I said, Lord, make me intoxicated in your no. In other words, may I be so drunk, and I don't mean that literally, but so intoxicated, right, with what you've given me that actually I'm not going to care what Instagram says, or what I just saw on TikTok down the street, or what I hear experientially by others.
Wow.
Because that's just not. So this idea of the interplay between power and gifts and deliverance, the real conversation for the church is, Lord, what have you given me and what have you not given me? And when I find out what you've given me, that's where I serve from. And where you haven't gifted me, I serve like a discipline, but I sure know I'm not going to be hunting something I've never asked for, or actually, sorry, that you've never given me. It's just free.
Right. Yeah.
It's just free.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like you actually know what the Father wills for your life. And then from there, you will start to do the things that he wants you to do, because you don't have that overwhelming pressure of trying to figure things out, or even desiring things that you shouldn't desire.
Right. And one of the critical ways to find out what the Father wants is to find out where you're spiritually gifted.
Wow.
That's it. Because that is the guaranteed place of power. The well is not you. Natural things you're born with and acquired things you learn are great, can be used for the kingdom, but they're not guaranteed places of power.
Right.
But gifts are guaranteed places of power, unless, of course, you grieve the Spirit. So they don't leave. The power just dims like a pilot light. It just goes down. So why I'm bringing this up, all related to deliverance, is, hey, listen, when evil's around, Ephesians 2, when something 3 o'clock in the morning shows up or you're tempted, you can say, hey, listen, I'm seated with Christ in the heavenly realms. True. And in time, it will have to leave. But the long-term serving in deliverance to see people set free, there better be office authority or gift authority, not just common authority, because that's how God designs all ministries. Like, you ever sat under someone and they preached and you were like, wow, don't ever do that again, but thanks for the try. I mean, you've had that experience.
Yeah,
we all have, right?
Yeah.
You're like, wow, like, thanks. Did the video guy just laugh? I thought I heard him laugh. Anyway, so you're like, wow, like, thanks, but that's the difference between a gift and discipline. And so we would never say, hey, listen, anyone could have the pulpit, or hey, anyone can. So the same in deliverance ministry, when it's setting up in a church, it's like, hey, let's find out who's spiritually gifted and gifts that could help with this. But that should be, by the way, the conversation for all 21 to 24 gifts. In every ministry, the goal of a church is to fill programs with spiritually gifted, aware people who use their gifts in that place. Wow. So you don't idolize the program, you just use the gifts in the thing.
Yeah.
Programs come and go, but gifts don't.
Whoa, that's huge. Programs come and go, but gifts don't.
That's huge. And I'm telling you, yeah, it's huge, because people begin to idolize a program. But we did a Bethmore Bible study, and now you want to do a this Bible study. Or we used to run a WANA for kids, and now you want to do this other thing. And they defend the program and forget the only transferable thing in the kingdom related to power and influence is the gifts.
Wow.
Not the program.
Right.
Programs are like visions. Mission is forever, but on this side of Jesus' return. But visions have shelf lives, and so do programs. But spiritual gifts are permanent.
Right.
So how do I use where I'm gifted to do this thing is the critical question, which you're wrestling down as a church, obviously, and in the area of spiritual conflict, where you're trying to say, how do we do this for everyone? But also, how do we launch something? And it's like two conversations at once.
Oh, definitely. And honestly, deliverance, I think, throws you into the deep end, because you're like, I got to start with both of those conversations. And exactly how you're saying of your journey of being like, I'm learning biblically and theologically on this topic, but at the same time, I'm helping people being set free from a demonic presence. And there's no how'd you say it? I can't tell the demonic presence. I can't tell the demons, hey, can you just hold on? I need to make a biblical case before I can help you. You know what I mean? Like, you have to step into this. Were those moments during your guys' like developing the ministry of like, hey, I have somebody here, or I have a group of people, there's something happening. And then you have some people that are like, okay, but I haven't developed the spiritual gift, but you're kind of like, no, this person needs to be free, you know?
Yeah. So like one of the things that happens all the time, it's twofold. Usually when God organically begins to challenge a church to see if they're serious about seeing people free, he usually tests a church.
Whoa.
To see. Lots of people pray about revival and they sing songs about, Lord, we want you to come to our city and all this stuff. And the Lord goes, okay, well then here.
Wow.
And then a lot of churches make a deal with the devil where they go, well, that's too weird, so I won't bother you if you won't bother me, of all stripes. And I understand it, because fear is a powerful thing. And also, you don't want to hurt people, right? You want to do this well and thoughtfully. Right. But yeah, a lot of times God also has already got people in the community who he's been prepping. They just don't have the theological lenses for what they're experiencing. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So God will always provide. The danger, though, is that when things begin to really start ramping up, what happens is the evil one will start sending more and more cases to wipe your staff out so you don't actually do anything else.
Wow.
See, just because you start dealing with the demonic doesn't mean you stop preaching.
Right.
Or you're still like helping children understand who Jesus is, or trying to, help deal with poverty in LA, like whatever you're all doing.
Yeah.
Like, this is not more spiritually important than the other things. It's just one of the things.
Yeah.
And so the danger in a community in moments like this is to almost either elevate this by mistake, and you have to for a period because it's awareness, but then keep it up. But then also the evil one will start sending sort of like really difficult or smaller cases. So you're like, it's nonstop. And then you're like, hold on a second. I never even wrote a sermon this week. And that's fine for 1 week, but it's not fine for 12 weeks.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's when you have to start going, okay, we need a system. Okay, we need more volunteers. Actually, no, you've been demonized for 10 years and you're going to be fine for 3 more weeks. You're going to wait.
Wow. Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, because it's like, think about it medically, and this is language I use in Deliverance in the new edition that came out. I just came out. I don't know if you know that. So there's like 40 pages at the back where we downloaded our whole process, and we talked through the history of how we had to engage this, and we use medical terminology, and so. When your church starts maturing, you move from a MASH unit, right, where you're covered in blood and it's all like it's happening, to almost like to a doula experience, then to a nursing hospital. Like there are just ways that you organizationally think this through, like you would in any ministry.
Right.
And so like the crisis begins the conversation, but then the crisis has to lead to organization, because you have to care for your staff, you have to care for your service teams, and you have to serve the people well. And so there's a maturity that begins to build as you build this out. And that partially is actually you're waiting 2 months and you're going to be fine.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I feel like a lot of churches wrestle with that probably once they really get into like the nitty gritty of it.
Yep.
And,
but it's the same lens. The same lens as when you're dealing with like poverty or family breakdown or crisis. Yeah. These are all brutal, broken things, and sometimes your helping can hurt if you don't think as process. So again, like this is what we've worked so hard on here. We don't view administration as less spiritual as discernment of spirits. It's 2 spiritual gifts. Yeah. And so we don't view shepherding as less significant than teaching. Yeah. And so we try building systems that accommodate as many gifts as possible so people are taken care of well. And again, it depends on age and stage and life and how many volunteers and all of that's still real. It's not perfect here at all. It's like chaos around here half the time. But the point is, you start realizing, oh my goodness, like I have to be empowered by the Spirit. It's prompting and planning. This is the language we use all the time. We move from what the Lord has spoken to building a plan so we can actually enforce the prompting well. Right. That's the heart of much of this.
Right. Yeah. And that's super cool. As we kind of veer on the close, I kind of want to ask, so in speaking of all of that, like, yeah, I feel like people in the ministry or just even with church, when they start to have these experiences, obviously there's clearly the shock, right? Like we don't know what to do, all of the stuff. And then as the process continues to go, I don't want to say it's trial and error, because there are people's lives that God's bringing to us that are broken and lost. But at the same time, I feel like, yeah, you kind of are growing even in the spiritual gifts and growing as it. And my dad has a story of, he was, and I'm probably going to butcher his story, so he'll probably end up texting me or calling me when he sees this and be like, that was wrong. Right. But from what I remember is that him and a friend went to go preach and do worship at this church. And when they went to the church, there was somebody there who was demonically oppressed and just yelling, doing all of these things. And so my dad told the pastor, like, do you guys want help from this? Because this isn't great. Like, he was literally putting fear in the rest of the congregation. And so they were like, yeah, let's go ahead and deal with this. And so they took him to a different room. But the pastor started to beat up the person with his Bible. I mean, like, physically. And my dad is just kind of like, whoa, what are we doing? Like, do you even know how to do this? And that was kind of like the eye-opening moments for me, is when he was telling me that story of like, whoa, yeah, a lot of people, and that story is pretty, I feel like it might be relevant for a lot of churches. And just understanding that, like, yeah, we need to get a better understanding of this, and need to really hone in on the spiritual gifts, because then we'll have unfortunate stories like that. Where,
well, yeah, and the other thing too is, like, never forget, at the end of the day, if someone's demonized, it's not, because a lot of people think they are that aren't. A lot of it is mental illness. It's not the demonic, or sometimes it's a mix of both. But I just would say this, that never forget that the point is the person's freedom.
Yeah.
The whole point of this is to love the person.
Mm-hmm.
To love the person.
Right.
And so, any sort of weird physical, but like, 25 years in, I've never had to restrain anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ever.
Wow.
But there's no need for that.
Yeah, correct.
There's no need for that. Here's what I will say to you as we're coming to an end, though, because you just use sort of outsider language.
Mm-hmm.
I think the real conversation that will probably emerge in your community is not those from the outside coming in going, I need help.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's going to happen is there's lots of key people in your church, including probably staff members and elders and others, who are going to go, oh, that's me. Because usually when this gets real, and the Lord gets really close, a bunch of really respected people go, hold on, that's possible? Well, actually, I've never said this, but for the last 15 years, for the last 12 years, actually my whole life, my wife, my child. And so the attention might need to be like, Lord, what healing are you going to do even on the inside, even as you bring the outside in?
Wow. Yeah.
There's nothing more powerful, Drew, than someone who's respected being set free.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see them next Sunday and you take communion together and it's just normal.
Wow.
If your church, and I know nothing about your church, if your church is like serious, it's not just like, hey, this is the exciting next thing. I'm not saying you're saying that,
right.
But like, it's for real. One of the great prayers that will have to happen in your church is you say, Lord, you can just actually show up in such power that anyone who's demonized in our church, could you tell them so they can be set free?
Wow. Yeah. That's a powerful prayer.
Well, it is, but we prayed it, and we had elders and pastors and leaders and worship leaders, and you can imagine how the spiritual temperature changes when more spiritual gatekeepers and key volunteers suddenly are free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then you have to ask the question theologically, is that even possible? Which you're all working through, so God bless you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We're working through it. And yeah, that prayer will definitely be central as well. And yeah, that's really good stuff. Okay, just the last thing.
Sure.
I just want to know, because when we talk about deliverance, I think for churches that are not used to it, or even people that are not have yet to break through that, tend to be on the fearful side rather than the victory side. And so I just want to know from you, your experience through all of this, like, what have been the most impactful stories? What has been the joy of it? Obviously that can take an hour, because I'm sure you have so many stories, but if you can hone in on a couple or even just one.
Yeah. Yeah, because of time, I don't think I'll do some stories. There are hundreds
Yeah,
of
I bet.
stories,
Yeah.
right, that I've witnessed. But here's what I'll say. There is nothing more powerful than when a demonic being says, I'm not stronger than God the Father's predestination. I'm not stronger than Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, and I cannot remove the seal of the Holy Spirit.
Wow.
Like Ephesians chapter 1 for me is the most important passage when it comes to spiritual conflict, not Ephesians 6.
Huh.
I say to the evil one all the time, are you stronger than God the Father's election before the beginning of time? I'm just asking. Are you, and they're strong and powerful and they have all their teeth, but honestly.
Right.
And so that is beautiful to see it's not their confession. It's their begrudging statement. And there's nothing else. I've just seen hundreds of people radically be they're not suddenly different people, but they're just they have peace for the first time. There's not 14 voices in their head, or the temptation goes from 100,000 to 10, or they suddenly realize that their salvation's not at stake because this voice has told them for years and actually it wasn't the Holy Spirit. There's so many things. But to your whole audience, because you just said it, look, this is really simple. Jesus is really good. He is actually that good.
Mm-hmm.
And every time God shows up and does something, he always sends a prophet, an angel, or someone else to say one phrase: do not be afraid. So even if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, man, I think that guy's a total heretic. Okay, that's fine. Breathe. I'm good with that. Do your homework theologically to see if that's true. Because, don't be on X and on Instagram tweeting stuff out when you haven't done your homework. You're not allowed to do that as a Christian. That's called lying.
Right.
That's lying. You're not allowed to do that.
Right.
So slow down and read well. But after you've read well, just remember this. Fear cannot be the starting point of your theology. Just because you've seen something abused, just because you've seen something misused, doesn't mean it's untrue. It just means it was misused or abused. Just because you're afraid of it doesn't mean you shouldn't face it. It's who you're facing it with. And if you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh crap, that's me, oh my goodness, and I go to this church, perfect. You don't think that it was the Lord's graciousness? You're listening to this podcast, you're going to this church, and suddenly this church is finally willing to talk about this thing you didn't think you could talk about. He's that good. He's that. Yeah. So just do not fear. He's got you. Be prepared for some difficult stuff, but also he's going to help you.
Yeah. He's
going to help you. And the starting point has to be trust in God the Father's work. Trust in the historic and ongoing work of Jesus, and trust in the power of the Spirit. Because remember what Ephesians 4:30 says, you are sealed until the day of redemption. You can't kick him out of his own house. He's going nowhere. You're sealed until he returns. So the Spirit has got you. You're good. You're going to be okay. And just read slow, pray slow, talk slow, think slow, and ask for mercy. And you'll see some pretty amazing things.
Yeah. Wow, that was really good. I love that too. That could be a different podcast talking about the read slow, all of that. But thank you for that. Thank you for your time and honestly for doing a deep dive into all of this. And I'm sure your church has seen so much healing and so much, just so many people being set free. And because of your book, I already know there's so many people that are beginning to be like, hey, I'm experiencing this. Here's a great guide to help you understand biblically, theologically, and also testimonials of this actually working through the power of Jesus' name. And so thank you for your work. Thank you for your time. I really enjoyed this. And I know a lot of the listeners are going to really enjoy this.
Great. Thanks, Drew. And God bless your church.
Yeah, thank you.